Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Whether you stumbled upon this space out of curiosity or came seeking solace, I welcome you with open arms and a compassionate heart. Today, we will embark on a journey, one not about perfection, but about finding a gentle way through the turbulence of life's uncertainties. In this fast-paced world, where deadlines loom, relationships tangle, and the fear of the unknown weighs heavy on our hearts, anxiety often feels like an unwelcome companion. It creeps into the quiet corners of our minds, filling them with doubt, fear, and unending what-ifs. Yet, what if I told you that even this discomfort, this gnawing sense of unease, can be a teacher, guiding us toward inner peace and a deeper understanding of ourselves? As someone deeply rooted in the teachings of Buddhism, I have often reflected on how we, as human beings, interact with our minds. The Buddha once described the mind as a wild monkey, jumping from one thought to another, restless and untrained. Anxiety, in many ways, is the monkey's cry, a response to a future it cannot control or a past it cannot change. But just as the monkey can be soothed with patience and kindness, so too can our minds be calmed. Today, I want to share not only techniques but also a way of seeing the world, a lens through which we can view anxiety, not as a curse but as a stepping stone toward growth. This isn't about fighting or escaping our feelings. Instead, it's about embracing them with open arms, acknowledging their presence, and gently transforming their energy into something purposeful and healing. When I say embrace, I don't mean to romanticize suffering or suggest that it's easy. It isn't. Anxiety can feel like an insurmountable mountain, but every mountain is climbed one step at a time. Through awareness, deliberate action, and a compassionate understanding of ourselves, we can navigate the valleys and peaks of life with grace. The Buddha taught that suffering is a universal part of human existence. But he also taught that there is a path to liberation. This path begins not with denial or distraction but with awareness and honest recognition of where we are right now. Even if that place is uncomfortable, only when we stop running from our pain can we start to understand it. Think of anxiety as a storm. At its height, the wind howls, the rain lashes, and everything feels chaotic. But if we step back, we can see that every storm has a calm center where stillness prevails. This stillness is always present, even in the fiercest storms of our minds. The practice of mindfulness, rooted in Buddhist teachings, is about finding that stillness and dwelling in it, even as the storm rages on. Today, I invite you to reflect on these questions. What is the nature of your storm? What fears, doubts, or uncertainties are fueling it? And most importantly, how can you find your way to the calm eye within it? I don't claim to have all the answers, no one does. But through the teachings of mindfulness, self-awareness, and deliberate action, I have found tools that have helped me and many others turn anxiety into an opportunity for growth. These tools aren't just for monks or scholars. They're for anyone willing to take a small, meaningful step toward understanding their own mind. So, let us begin this journey together. Let us approach it not with the expectation of instant relief but with the quiet determination to learn and grow. For every moment we spend understanding our inner world, we take a step closer to the peace that lies within us. And in that peace, we discover something profound, that we are not defined by our anxiety or our fears. We are not the storm, we are the sky that holds it. The storm will pass, as all storms do, and the sky will remain vast, unbroken, and serene. Take a deep breath, feel the air fill your lungs and know that in this moment, you are safe. The journey begins now, not in some far-off future but here, in the present moment. Let us walk this path together, with patience, mindfulness, and the quiet confidence that peace is always within reach. Then acknowledge and accept anxiety. The first step in managing anxiety is simple. But it's not always easy. Recognize and accept your mental state. Too often, when anxiety shows up, we fight against it. We tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way, or, if I ignore it, maybe it'll disappear. But if you've ever tried to push away anxious thoughts, you know the truth, they only grow louder. Fighting your feelings is like trying to hold a spring-loaded door shut. Eventually, the pressure builds, and the door flies open with even more force. Acceptance, on the other hand, is a quiet act of bravery. It's saying to yourself, this is where I am right now. My mind is in anxiety mode, and that's okay. By acknowledging your anxiety, you take the first step toward breaking its grip. You stop seeing it as a monster to battle and start seeing it as a natural, temporary state of being. The power of acknowledgement. There's a powerful story in Buddhism that illustrates this idea. Angulimala, whose name translates to garland of fingers, was once one of the most feared criminals in ancient India. He was consumed by anger and caused unimaginable suffering. People saw him as a monster, and he saw himself the same way. One day, he encountered the Buddha, who stood calmly in his path. When Angulimala demanded to know why the Buddha wasn't afraid, the Buddha said something surprising. I have stopped. Angulimala, it is you who have not stopped. In that moment, the Buddha acknowledged Angulimala, not just as a criminal, but as a person. This act of acknowledgement shifted something deep within Angulimala. He saw, perhaps for the first time, that his actions didn't have to define him. He chose to leave his violent life behind and eventually became a peaceful monk. What does this story teach us about anxiety? It shows us the power of acknowledgement. When we stop running from our feelings and instead face them head-on, we create space for transformation. Stop shooting the second arrow. Another Buddhist teaching offers a practical metaphor for how we deal with pain and anxiety. Imagine you're struck by an arrow. This represents the initial pain or discomfort we all experience in life. It's unavoidable. But now imagine being hit by a second arrow, one that you shot yourself. This second arrow represents the additional suffering we create when we resist or judge our feelings. Anxiety itself is the first arrow. It's uncomfortable, but it's part of being human. The second arrow comes when we layer frustration, shame, or fear on top of our anxiety. By accepting our feelings instead of fighting them, we avoid that second arrow. A real-life parallel, Viktor Frankl's story. Even outside Buddhism, this wisdom resonates. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and renowned psychologist, wrote about the power of acceptance in his book Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl endured unimaginable suffering in concentration camps, yet he realized that even in those dire circumstances, he had one freedom no one could take away: the ability to choose his response. Instead of resisting or denying his reality, Frankl accepted it. This acceptance gave him the clarity to focus on what he could control: his thoughts and attitude. His story is a testament to the fact that acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means reclaiming your power. How to practice acceptance. So, how can you begin to practice acknowledgement and acceptance in your own life? Here's a simple exercise. Pause and observe. When you feel anxiety creeping in, pause. Take a deep breath and notice the sensations in your body. Name it. Silently say to yourself, I feel anxious. Studies show that naming your emotions can reduce their intensity. Remind yourself, remember that these feelings are temporary, like clouds passing across the sky. Be kind. Speak to yourself as you would to a friend. Replace judgment with compassion. A final thought. Acknowledging and accepting anxiety isn't about liking it or wishing it upon yourself. It's about stepping back, taking a deep breath, and saying, this is where I am right now, and that's okay. Imagine anxiety as a wave. When you fight against it, it pulls you under. But when you let go and allow yourself to float, the wave carries you forward, and eventually, it fades. Remember, you are not your anxiety. You are the calm observer, the unshakable presence behind the storm. Acceptance is the first step toward reclaiming your peace and power. Focus on one task at a time. Anxiety often feels overwhelming because it creates a mental storm, a swirling chaos of fears, responsibilities, and what ifs. This state often arises when we attempt to juggle multiple tasks simultaneously, stretching our attention thin. The mind becomes like a crowded room, filled with voices clamoring for attention. But as the Buddha taught, simplicity and focus are keys to clarity and peace. By breaking tasks into manageable actions and committing to completing one at a time, we can calm the storm within and regain control. The Buddha and the Hungry Tiger, a lesson in presence. One story from the life of the Buddha beautifully illustrates the importance of focusing on the present moment. While walking through a forest, the Buddha encountered a tiger, starving and ferocious. Instead of panicking or trying to escape, the Buddha calmly observed the situation and responded mindfully. He noticed the tiger's suffering and, with great compassion, offered it food he carried. This story is not just about compassion but also about presence. The Buddha didn't allow fear of what might happen to control his actions. He focused on what could be done in that exact moment, no more, no less. Similarly, when anxiety overwhelms us with the weight of too many responsibilities, focusing on a single task allows us to act with clarity and calm. Practical steps: simplify, prioritize, and act. Here are practical steps to apply this principle in your life. Find a quiet space. Anxiety thrives in chaos. To begin, step away from the noise and find a quiet place to sit and reflect. Write down your worries. Take a piece of paper and list everything weighing on your mind. This act of externalizing your thoughts reduces their emotional intensity. Sort tasks into two categories. What you can control. These are tasks or actions directly within your power to influence. What you cannot control. These are situations or outcomes beyond your immediate influence. Focus on one actionable task. Choose one item from the what you can control list and commit to completing it. By doing this, you narrow your focus to what truly matters. Instead of being paralyzed by the enormity of your responsibilities, you take tangible steps forward. The parable of the mustard seed. Another famous Buddhist story highlights the power of simplicity and focus. A grieving woman, devastated by the loss of her child, came to the Buddha seeking help. He told her to bring a mustard seed from any household in her village, but only if that household had never experienced death. The woman went from door to door, but every family she visited had faced loss. Slowly, she realized the universality of suffering. This process of focused action allowed her to shift her perspective and begin healing. What can we learn from this story? By narrowing her focus to a single, concrete task, the woman was able to confront her grief in a structured way. Similarly, when overwhelmed by anxiety, breaking down challenges into manageable tasks can guide us toward resolution. A lesson from meditation: gathering oranges. Imagine you're trying to carry a large pile of oranges in your hands. If you try to grab all of them at once, many will fall and scatter. But if you pick up one orange at a time and place it in a basket, the task becomes manageable, even effortless. This metaphor aligns closely with the teachings of meditation. In meditation, the mind often wanders, racing from one thought to the next. But instead of trying to stop the flood of thoughts all at once, we gently bring our focus back to the breath, one inhale, one exhale. In life, the same principle applies. Focusing on a single action, fully and deliberately, reduces mental clutter. Each completed task becomes a step toward greater clarity and peace. The power of action, a story from the Buddha's enlightenment. During the night of his enlightenment, the Buddha faced a series of distractions and fears. Personified as Mara, Mara sent temptations, doubts, and threats to disturb the Buddha's focus. Yet the Buddha didn't fight or flee. Instead, he calmly acknowledged Mara's presence and continued meditating. This story shows the transformative power of sustained focus. The Buddha didn't try to address every distraction at once. He simply remained steadfast in his goal, completing one moment of meditation at a time. For us, the lesson is clear. Anxiety often feels like an insurmountable storm. But by focusing on one action, no matter how small, we can move forward, step by step. From chaos to calm, a modern example. A modern story echoes these ancient lessons. A young professional, overwhelmed by deadlines and personal responsibilities, turned to mindfulness to manage her anxiety. She began each day by writing down her tasks and separating them into urgent and non-urgent categories. Then, she picked one task and set a timer for 25 minutes, a technique called the Pomodoro method. During that time, she focused solely on the chosen task, resisting the urge to check emails or multitask. Over weeks, this simple habit transformed her mental state. What once felt like an unmanageable workload became a series of achievable steps. This practical approach mirrors the Buddhist emphasis on mindful, deliberate action. Practical reflection, how to start. Pause and center yourself. When anxiety arises, take 3 deep breaths. Feel your feet on the ground and remind yourself that you don't need to solve everything at once. Write and categorize. Spend 5 minutes listing your worries. Separate them into tasks you can act on and situations outside your control. Take one step, choose one task from your can control list and act on it. Even a small action, sending an email, making a call, or tidying your space, can create momentum. Celebrate small wins. Acknowledge your effort after completing each task. This reinforces the habit of focused action and reduces anxiety over time. Moving forward. The weight of anxiety often lies not in the size of our responsibilities but in how we perceive them. By narrowing our focus to a single task, we simplify our mental landscape and reclaim our power to act. As the Buddha taught, peace doesn't come from finishing everything at once. It comes from being fully present in each moment. So, the next time anxiety pulls you in multiple directions, pause, take a breath, focus on one thing at a time, and trust that each small step will lead you closer to calm. Clarify and prioritize. Anxiety often thrives in ambiguity. When we face a seemingly endless list of tasks or a tangled web of fears, it becomes difficult to know where to start. The key to untangling this mental chaos is clarity, bringing structure to the overwhelming swirl of thoughts. The Buddha's teachings emphasize mindfulness and discernment, both of which help us recognize what truly matters and focus on what we can influence. By writing down our situation, identifying what we can control, and letting go of what we cannot, we reclaim a sense of balance and direction. The story of Siddhartha's renunciation, a lesson in priorities. Before becoming the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama lived as a prince surrounded by luxury and excess. However, despite having every worldly pleasure, he felt a profound dissatisfaction. He realized that his current path, filled with material distractions, was not leading to true peace or understanding. One night, Siddhartha made a bold decision to leave behind his palace, wealth, and family to seek enlightenment. This was an act of prioritization. He clarified what mattered most to him, finding the root of human suffering, and let go of everything that didn't serve that purpose. This story reminds us of the power of clarity and prioritization. When we strip away distractions and focus on what truly matters, we free ourselves from unnecessary burdens. Like Siddhartha, we must ask, what is most important in this moment? What can I let go of? Practical steps for clarifying and prioritizing. Pause and reflect. Begin by taking a moment to breathe and ground yourself. Anxiety often clouds judgment, so starting with mindfulness can create mental space for clearer thinking. Write it all down, make a list of everything on your mind: tasks, fears, responsibilities. Seeing them on paper helps externalize your thoughts, making them feel more manageable. Separate what you can and cannot control. Under your control, actions you can take, such as responding to an email or addressing a specific problem. Out of your control, situations you cannot directly influence, like other people's opinions or unpredictable outcomes. Rank by importance and urgency. What needs immediate attention? What can wait? What aligns with your long-term goals or values? Start small, choose one actionable task and focus solely on completing it. This creates momentum and reduces the paralysis of indecision. The parable of the raft, letting go of the unnecessary. The Buddha once told the parable of a man who needed to cross a river. To do so, he built a raft from materials around him and paddled safely to the other side. However, after crossing, he continued to carry the raft on his back, even though it was no longer needed. The Buddha explained that clinging to what no longer serves us is a source of suffering. Like the man carrying the raft, we often hold on to fears or responsibilities that we no longer need to bear. By identifying and releasing these burdens, we lighten our load and move forward with ease. When clarifying and prioritizing, ask yourself, am I carrying unnecessary weight? If the answer is yes, let it go. A modern story, The Eisenhower Matrix. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, known for his effective decision-making, developed a simple tool to prioritize tasks. His method, now called the Eisenhower Matrix, divides tasks into 4 categories. Urgent and important, do these immediately. Important but not urgent, schedule these for later. Urgent but not important, delegate these if possible. Neither urgent nor important, eliminate these altogether. This practical framework echoes Buddhist teachings on discernment. By focusing on what truly matters, you can reduce anxiety and direct your energy where it counts. The lesson of Kisa Gotami, a shift in perspective. Kisa Gotami, a young mother, was devastated when her child died. Consumed by grief, she sought help from the Buddha. He instructed her to bring him a mustard seed from any household that had never experienced loss. As she went door to door, she realized that every family had faced suffering in some form. This revelation helped her see that her grief, while deeply personal, was part of the shared human experience. With this clarity, she was able to let go of her attachment to her suffering and find peace. Kisa Gotami's story teaches us the importance of perspective when clarifying our priorities. Sometimes, what feels insurmountable becomes manageable when we step back and see the bigger picture. Acting on what you can control. Once you've clarified your situation and identified your priorities, the next step is action. This requires focus and deliberate effort, but it's essential for reducing anxiety. The power of one step at a time. In the Buddhist tradition, the concept of right action, Samma Kamanta, emphasizes taking intentional steps that align with your values and goals. Instead of being overwhelmed by the entire journey, focus on the next step in front of you. For example, if you're worried about a looming deadline, start by drafting an outline. If you're anxious about a relationship, consider writing a letter or having a conversation. Each small action builds momentum and reduces the weight of your worries. The story of the poisoned arrow. A disciple once asked the Buddha deep philosophical questions about the nature of existence. Instead of answering, the Buddha told him the story of a man struck by a poisoned arrow. Rather than seeking immediate treatment, the man demanded to know who shot the arrow, what it was made of, and why it was aimed at him. In the end, his indecision cost him his life. The Buddha explained that focusing on what we cannot know or control distracts us from what truly matters. Instead, we should focus on immediate actions that lead to healing and progress. This story reinforces the importance of acting on what we can control. Dwelling on the unchangeable only delays our path to peace. Moving forward, clarity and prioritization are powerful tools for managing anxiety. By identifying what's within your control, letting go of what isn't, and taking deliberate action, you create a sense of order and purpose. Remember the lessons of the Buddha, Kisa Gotami, and even modern tools like the Eisenhower Matrix. Each story and practice points to the same truth. Peace comes not from doing everything at once, but from focusing on what truly matters. Take a moment today to pause, reflect, and clarify your priorities. Write down your tasks, let go of what you can't control, and take one meaningful step forward. With each action, you'll find that the overwhelming weight of anxiety begins to lift, leaving space for clarity, calm, and confidence. Work slowly and deliberately. In a world that constantly demands speed and efficiency, slowing down feels counterintuitive. Yet, when anxiety takes hold, rushing often amplifies the chaos. The Buddhist approach reminds us that deliberate, mindful actions not only calm the mind but also create clarity and purpose. By moving slowly and intentionally, we align our actions with awareness, transforming everyday tasks into moments of mindfulness. The story of the Buddha and the flower, the power of presence. One of the most well-known stories in Buddhism is the flower sermon. During a gathering of his disciples, the Buddha silently held up a single flower, while others looked confused. One disciple, Mahakassapa, simply smiled. In that moment, the Buddha recognized Mahakassapa's understanding of mindfulness and awareness. The story illustrates that profound wisdom and peace often emerge, not through words or speed but through deep presence and attention to the simplicity of the moment. Working slowly and deliberately, whether it's washing dishes or completing a complex project, allows us to connect with the present rather than becoming overwhelmed by worries about the past or future. The science of slowing down. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient wisdom. When we rush, the brain's fight-or-flight response activates, leading to heightened anxiety. Conversely, slowing down triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, calming both the mind and body. For example, taking deliberate, slow breaths reduces cortisol levels, a stress hormone. Similarly, performing tasks mindfully, such as eating slowly or walking intentionally, shifts focus from anxiety to the present moment. A practical practice, the half-speed rule. A useful technique inspired by mindfulness is the half-speed rule. When you feel overwhelmed, intentionally slow your actions by half. For example, walking, instead of rushing. Take slower, deliberate steps. Feel your feet touch the ground with each movement. Speaking, pause before responding in conversations. Choose your words carefully and calmly. Working, tackle tasks one at a time. Moving at a measured pace. By practicing this, you engage fully with the task at hand, reducing mental clutter and fostering a sense of calm. The story of the ox herding pictures, patience in practice. The 10 ox herding pictures, a famous Zen Buddhist teaching, depict a spiritual journey through 10 stages, from seeking the ox, symbolizing the mind, to taming and riding it. In one picture, the ox herder moves slowly, step by step, as he tames the ox. The lesson here is clear: mastery of the mind and self comes not through force or speed but through patience and deliberate practice. This mirrors the process of managing anxiety. When you slow down and approach challenges one step at a time, you build inner strength and clarity, just like the ox herder. Deliberate actions in everyday life. Mindful eating. Eating quickly often reflects a restless mind. Instead, practice eating slowly. Pay attention to the taste, texture, and aroma of your food. This simple act grounds you in the present and reduces anxious thoughts. Mindful walking. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Zen master, often spoke of walking meditation. He taught that with each step, you should say silently, "I have arrived. I am home." This practice transforms walking into a deliberate, calming ritual, connecting you to the here and now. Mindful cleaning. Even mundane tasks like cleaning can become opportunities for mindfulness. As you sweep or wash dishes, focus fully on the movement of your hands and the sensation of water or soap. The story of a broken bowl, acceptance in slow living. A Zen master once used a broken bowl to teach his students about mindfulness and acceptance. While washing dishes, the master handled a fragile bowl with deliberate care, knowing it might break. When it finally did, he simply smiled and said, "This bowl was already broken." The lesson: moving slowly and deliberately doesn't guarantee perfection or prevent loss, but it allows us to fully engage with the present. By accepting impermanence and focusing on each moment, we reduce the anxiety tied to outcomes. Meditation as the ultimate practice of deliberation. Meditation is the cornerstone of Buddhist practice, emphasizing the power of slow, intentional focus. Whether it's through breathing, chanting, or mindful observation, meditation teaches us to let go of distractions and connect with the present. A simple meditation practice. Sit comfortably, find a quiet space and sit with your back straight. Focus on your breath, inhale deeply, noticing the air entering your nostrils. Exhale slowly, feeling the release. Return to the breath. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back to your breath. This deliberate practice mirrors the approach to working slowly. Each time you focus on your breath, you're building the muscle of mindfulness, which can then be applied to daily tasks. The lesson of the candle, sustained light. Another Zen story tells of a monk lighting a candle in a dark room. He moves slowly, shielding the flame from the wind. The act of lighting and protecting the candle becomes a metaphor for mindfulness. Slow, steady actions preserve the light, while haste or carelessness snuff it out. Similarly, deliberate actions sustain the light of awareness in our lives. When we rush, we risk extinguishing our inner calm. Moving forward, slowing down is not about doing less, it's about doing better. When you approach life with deliberate intention, you calm your mind, reduce anxiety, and find joy in the simplest actions. The next time you feel overwhelmed, pause. Take a deep breath. Move deliberately, whether it's in your work, relationships, or daily routines. Remember, peace is not found in speed but in presence. By slowing down, you'll discover that life becomes richer, calmer, and more meaningful. Complete each task fully. One of the simplest but most effective ways to manage anxiety is to fully complete each task before moving on to the next. When tasks are left unfinished, they linger in the mind, creating a sense of unease and incompleteness. This is known as the Zeigarnik effect, where uncompleted tasks occupy more mental space, adding to stress. In Buddhist teachings, the principle of mindfulness reminds us to give our full attention to whatever we are doing, finishing each action with care and deliberation. By completing tasks fully, we release the mental burden of loose ends and create space for clarity and calm. The Buddha and the Deer, a story of complete attention. There is a famous story from the life of the Buddha that highlights the value of fully committing to one action at a time. While meditating in a forest, the Buddha noticed a deer caught in a hunter's trap. The animal was struggling, its fear palpable. Instead of continuing with his meditation or rushing to free the deer without thought, the Buddha approached the situation with full awareness. He observed the trap, ensured it could be safely undone, and calmed the deer with his presence before carefully releasing it. The deer, sensing his calm and deliberate actions, stayed still and allowed him to help. This story teaches us the importance of completing an action with full mindfulness. If the Buddha had rushed or left the task incomplete, the deer might have hurt itself further. Similarly, in our lives, when we divide our attention or leave things unfinished, the results often fall short, and anxiety grows. The lesson of the sand mandala. In Tibetan Buddhism, monks create intricate sand mandalas using millions of grains of colored sand. These artworks take days, sometimes weeks, to complete. Each grain is placed with precision, and the monks give their undivided attention to the process. Once the mandala is finished, it is ceremonially destroyed, symbolizing the impermanence of life. This might seem contradictory. Why pour so much effort into something that will be erased? The answer lies in the act of completion. By fully dedicating themselves to the task, the monks honor the present moment, showing that the process is as meaningful as the result. For us, the lesson is clear: completing each task fully, regardless of its permanence, allows us to honor the moment and move forward without regret. Practical steps for completing tasks fully. Break tasks into steps. Large tasks can feel overwhelming, but breaking them into smaller, actionable steps makes them manageable. Focus on completing one step at a time. Set boundaries for focus. Eliminate distractions during a task. Turn off notifications. Close unnecessary tabs, and create a space where you can focus. Use a timer. Dedicate a specific amount of time to a task, such as 25 minutes using the Pomodoro technique, and work on it exclusively during that time. Acknowledge completion. When you finish a task, take a moment to acknowledge your effort. This reinforces the habit of completing actions fully. The story of Ananda and the water jar. Ananda, the Buddha's devoted disciple, was tasked with bringing water for the Sangha. On his way to the river, he encountered someone in need of guidance and stopped to help. When he returned, he realized he had not completed his original task of fetching water. The Buddha gently reminded Ananda of the importance of completing each action before starting another. Ananda, he said, when you attend to one thing at a time, with full awareness, the mind finds peace. This story reflects the Buddhist emphasis on mindful action. While helping others is noble, leaving tasks unfinished can create unnecessary chaos. Ananda learned that fully completing one task before moving to the next cultivates clarity and reduces mental clutter. The Zeigarnik effect and Buddhist wisdom. Psychologists have identified a phenomenon called the Zeigarnik effect, which states that the mind tends to focus on incomplete tasks more than completed ones. This explains why unfinished responsibilities can weigh heavily on our minds, even when we're not actively thinking about them. Buddhism offers a solution through the practice of right effort, samma vayama. Part of the Noble Eightfold Path, right effort encourages us to focus on wholesome actions and see them through to completion. By doing so, we reduce mental agitation and cultivate inner peace. The parable of the empty cup, completing the moment. A Zen master once hosted a student who came seeking wisdom. The student began talking about all he had learned, listing philosophies and concepts he had studied. As he spoke, the master poured tea into the student's cup, continuing to pour even as it overflowed. The student exclaimed, "The cup is full. No more will fit." The master smiled and said, "Exactly. You must empty your cup before it can be filled again." This story teaches the importance of completing one moment before moving to the next. When we carry unfinished thoughts or tasks, our cup becomes too full, leaving no room for the present. By completing actions fully, we empty our mental cup, making space for new experiences. A modern parallel, the art of deep work. In today's fast-paced world, many people struggle with task switching, constantly shifting between emails, messages, and to-do lists. Cal Newport, in his book Deep Work, emphasizes the power of focusing on one task at a time, completing it with full attention before moving on. This principle aligns with Buddhist teachings on mindfulness. Whether it's writing a report, preparing a meal, or spending time with loved ones, giving your full attention to the task creates a sense of fulfillment and reduces anxiety. Meditation as a practice of completion. Meditation itself is an exercise in completing each moment fully. When meditating, you focus on your breath, one inhale and one exhale at a time. If your mind wanders, you gently bring it back to the present, completing each cycle of breath before moving to the next. This practice mirrors how we can approach tasks in daily life. By focusing fully on one action, whether it's a breath or a task, you cultivate the habit of completion, training your mind to stay present, moving forward with full attention. Completing each task fully is not just about productivity, it's about creating mental clarity and reducing anxiety. The next time you feel overwhelmed by an endless to-do list, pause and ask yourself, what is one thing I can complete right now? Can I give this task my full attention until it's done? By finishing each action slowly, deliberately, and entirely, you honor the moment and free your mind from the weight of unfinished business. As the Buddha taught, peace comes not from doing many things at once, but from doing each thing with mindfulness and care. Take one task, complete it fully, and then move forward with a lighter heart. Mind-body connection. The mind and body are deeply intertwined, influencing each other in profound ways. This connection is at the heart of Buddhist practice, where deliberate and mindful actions not only calm the mind but also harmonize the body. When the body moves slowly and intentionally, the mind follows suit, creating a state of balance and tranquility. Conversely, when the mind is agitated, it manifests physically through tension, restlessness, or fatigue. Recognizing this interplay helps us use the body as a gateway to cultivate mental calm and clarity. The Buddha and the quiet lake, a metaphor for mind-body balance. The Buddha once shared a powerful metaphor about the connection between the mind and body. He asked his disciples to imagine a lake. When the water is turbulent, it is impossible to see the bottom. But when the water becomes still, the clarity reveals everything beneath the surface. The body is like the surface of the lake, while the mind is the depths. If the body is restless or rushed, the mind mirrors this turbulence. By calming the body through slow breathing, mindful movement, or deliberate actions, we allow the mind to settle. Just like the stilling of the lake's surface, the science of the mind-body connection. The lesson of the bell, resonance through stillness. Thich Nhat Hanh, a revered Vietnamese Zen master, often spoke about the practice of using a bell to center oneself. He taught that when struck, the bell resonates most beautifully when it is still. If the bell is moving or unsteady, the sound is distorted. Our bodies are like the bell. When we are physically restless or tense, our thoughts become scattered. But when the body is still, the mind resonates with clarity and peace. A modern perspective, yoga and the mind-body connection. Yoga, often associated with mindfulness, integrates physical movement and mental focus. Each pose is performed slowly and deliberately, with attention to breath and body alignment. Practitioners report reduced anxiety, improved concentration, and a greater sense of calm. The Buddhist principle of sama vayama, right effort, parallels yoga's emphasis on intentionality. Both remind us that the quality of our actions matters more than the quantity. By focusing on the present moment and moving with awareness, we cultivate inner harmony. The story of the poisoned arrow, the power of the present. A disciple once asked the Buddha deep philosophical questions about life and the universe. Instead of answering, the Buddha told the story of a man struck by a poisoned arrow. The man refused treatment until he knew who shot the arrow, what it was made of, and why it was aimed at him. In his indecision, he died. The Buddha explained that focusing on irrelevant or uncontrollable details prevents us from addressing what truly matters. Similarly, when our minds are restless, the body reflects this tension, making it harder to move forward. By calming the body first, removing the metaphorical arrow, we clear the path for mental clarity. Applying the mind-body connection in daily life. 1. Start your day slowly. Instead of rushing out of bed, spend 5 minutes stretching or breathing deeply. Oh, this sets a calm tone for the day. 2. Pause during stressful moments. Oh, when overwhelmed. Step away for a moment of mindful breathing or a brief walk. Oh, use the body to reset the mind. 3. End the day with relaxation. Oh, practice a body scan meditation or gentle yoga before bed. Oh, this reduces residual tension and promotes restful sleep. Moving forward. The mind-body connection is a powerful tool for managing anxiety and cultivating mindfulness. By moving slowly and deliberately, you create a ripple effect, the body relaxes, the mind follows, and a sense of calm emerges. The next time you feel overwhelmed, pause, take a deep breath, slow your movements, and let your body guide your mind back to balance. Remember the Buddha's lesson of the quiet lake when the surface is still. The depths become clear. Through deliberate and mindful actions, you can achieve the peace and harmony you seek. Repeat the process. Life is a series of moments, each requiring our attention and energy. Once one task is completed, it is tempting to either rush into the next or linger too long, analyzing the task already done. Both habits create unnecessary mental clutter. The Buddhist principle of mindfulness teaches us to flow seamlessly from one moment to the next, carrying the same calm, deliberate energy forward. By repeating the process of mindful engagement, one task at a time, we refine our decision-making and cultivate a lasting sense of accomplishment. The story of the Buddha and the monk's bowl. One day, a monk in the Buddha's community accidentally dropped his alms bowl while cleaning. Embarrassed, the monk rushed to retrieve it and, in his haste, spilled water all over the floor. Observing this, the Buddha gently advised the monk, "When you clean the bowl, clean it with full attention. When you retrieve it with care. Finish one action fully before moving to the next." The monk followed this guidance, slowing down and repeating each step with mindfulness. By the time he completed the task, the process itself had become a calming meditation. This story emphasizes the importance of repeating mindful actions. Each step, when done with care, builds on the one before, creating not just a completed task but a sense of peace and fulfillment. The Buddhist cycle of cause and effect. In Buddhism, the concept of paticca samuppada, dependent origination, highlights the interconnected nature of actions and outcomes. Each action influences the next, like links in a chain. By completing tasks mindfully and moving to the next with the same focus, we create a cycle of positive cause and effect. For example, completing a work project with care not only brings satisfaction but also sets the tone for tackling the next challenge. Conversely, rushing through tasks leaves a trail of half-finished work and unresolved anxiety. By repeating the process of deliberate action, we create momentum that supports clarity and calm in all aspects of life. The lesson of the farmer and his field. A farmer once approached the Buddha, complaining about his many problems. Pests ate his crops. The weather was unpredictable, and his neighbors were unkind. The Buddha listened and then said, "You will always have 83 problems. If you solve one, another will arise." The farmer, frustrated, asked, "Then what's the point of trying?" The Buddha replied, "You have an 84th problem. It is your desire to have no problems." This story reminds us that life will always present new tasks and challenges. The key is not to eliminate them all but to approach each one with the same calm, mindful effort. By repeating the process, task by task, moment by moment, we find peace amid life's inevitable imperfections. Practical steps for repeating the process. Acknowledge completion. Before moving to the next task, take a moment to acknowledge the effort you've put into completing the previous one. This creates a sense of closure and gratitude. Recenter yourself. Pause and take a deep breath to reset your focus. Prioritize the next task. Use tools like to-do lists or mindfulness techniques to determine which task requires your attention next. Apply the same mindfulness. Approach the next task with the same deliberate focus, resisting the urge to rush or multitask. The parable of the mountain path. A young monk once asked his master, "How do I reach enlightenment?" The master replied, "Walk the path, one step at a time." The monk, impatient, asked, "But what if the path is too long?" The master smiled and said, "Then take the next step." This simple yet profound parable illustrates the power of repetition. Each step, no matter how small, is progress. By focusing on the step directly in front of us and repeating the process with mindful effort, we can navigate even the most daunting paths. The role of habits in Buddhist practice. In Buddhist practice, rituals such as chanting, meditation, and offering alms are repeated daily. These practices are not about reaching a destination but about cultivating awareness and discipline. For example, in meditation, practitioners focus on the breath. With each inhale and exhale, the process repeats. The mind inevitably wanders, but each time it does, the meditator gently brings it back to the breath. This repetition trains the mind to stay present, fostering a sense of calm and resilience that extends to other areas of life. The story of the lotus, growth through repetition. The lotus flower is a powerful symbol in Buddhism. It grows in muddy waters, rising above the surface to bloom in the sunlight. This growth does not happen all at once. Each day, the lotus stretches a little higher, repeating the process of reaching for light. In the same way, our personal growth comes through small, repeated efforts. Each completed task is like another step toward the surface, bringing us closer to clarity and peace. A modern example, building momentum. Consider a writer working on a novel. The task seems overwhelming at first, thousands of words, countless edits, and endless self-doubt. But by writing just one page a day, the writer builds momentum. Each completed page motivates the next. And over time, the novel takes shape. This mirrors the Buddhist approach to tasks. Focus on what is directly in front of you. Complete it fully, and then move forward with the same energy. Small, consistent efforts yield transformative results. The importance of small wins. Psychologists emphasize the value of small wins in building confidence and reducing anxiety. Completing even a minor task creates a sense of accomplishment, which fuels motivation for the next. In Buddhist terms, this is akin to the practice of right effort, samma vayama. By focusing on positive, achievable actions and repeating them with consistency, we cultivate a virtuous cycle of progress and peace. Moving forward with repetition. Repeating the process of mindful engagement one task at a time is not about perfection but about presence. Each task, no matter how small, is an opportunity to practice mindfulness and build momentum. The next time you complete a task, take a moment to pause. Acknowledge your effort, reset your focus, and approach the next task with the same calm deliberation. By repeating this process, you'll find that even the most challenging days become manageable, one step at a time. As the Buddha taught, enlightenment is not a single, grand achievement but a series of small, mindful actions repeated over a lifetime. Let each completed task be a step on your path, guiding you toward clarity, peace, and fulfillment. Cultivating patience through repetition. Patience is a virtue praised across cultures and philosophies, but in Buddhism, it holds a particularly significant place. Known as khanti in Pali, patience is considered one of the essential paramitas, perfections, that a bodhisattva must cultivate on the path to enlightenment. Patience is not merely about enduring discomfort or waiting for time to pass, it is an active practice of mindfulness, resilience, and acceptance. By repeating mindful actions, we develop this capacity, training ourselves to meet life's challenges with grace and inner strength. The story of the Bodhisattva Vesantara, a masterclass in patience. One of the most inspiring examples of patience and resilience in Buddhist literature is the story of the Bodhisattva Vesantara, a previous life of the Buddha. Vesantara was renowned for his boundless generosity and willingness to give away anything to anyone in need. This virtue was tested in ways that required immense patience and trust in the greater good. As the story goes, Vesantara gave away a magical white elephant, a symbol of prosperity, to another kingdom experiencing drought. While his intentions were noble, his people misunderstood his actions and exiled him to the forest, accompanied by his wife, Maddy, and their 2 children. Vesantara faced life in the wilderness with grace and patience. During his exile, his generosity was tested to its limits. He gave away his chariot, his horse, and even his children to a Brahmin who requested them as servants. Finally, he offered his wife to a hermit who sought companionship. These acts of selflessness required extraordinary patience and an unshakable commitment to his path. Despite the immense suffering and misunderstandings he endured, Vesantara remained steadfast. His story teaches us that patience is cultivated through repeated acts of mindfulness and generosity, even in the face of adversity. By letting go of attachment and trusting the process, we can grow stronger and more resilient. The role of repetition in building patience. Patience is not an innate trait, it is a skill developed through deliberate practice. Each time we face a situation that tests our resolve, we have an opportunity to strengthen our capacity for patience. This often involves repeating small, mindful actions that ground us in the present moment. Practical examples. 1. Daily meditation, sitting still and observing the breath, even when the mind wanders, is a practice in patience. Each time we gently return to the breath, we reinforce our ability to stay present. 2. Mindful conversations, listening fully to someone, without interrupting or rushing to respond, is a small but powerful way to practice patience. 3. Deliberate tasks, repeating a simple, mindful action, such as folding clothes or preparing food, teaches us to focus on the process rather than the outcome. The parable of the monk and the tree. In another Buddhist story, a young monk sought enlightenment but struggled with impatience. He approached his teacher, asking how long it would take to achieve his goal. The teacher replied, 10 years. The monk, eager to speed up the process, promised to work twice as hard. The teacher then said, in that case, it will take 20 years. Confused, the monk asked why. The teacher explained, if you are focused only on the outcome, you will fail to see the lessons in the present. True progress requires patience and mindfulness at every step. This parable underscores the idea that repetition and mindful engagement, rather than rushing, cultivate genuine patience and wisdom. Modern reflections, patience in a fast-paced world. In today's world, impatience is amplified by constant connectivity and the demand for instant results. Social media, fast food, and 24-hour news cycles train us to expect immediate gratification. However, this constant rush often leads to stress and dissatisfaction. Cultivating patience through repetition offers an antidote. By slowing down and focusing on one task at a time, we create space for reflection and growth. For example, cooking a meal, instead of rushing through dinner preparation, treat it as a mindful ritual. Chop vegetables slowly, savor the smells, and focus on the process. Waiting in line, use moments of waiting as opportunities to practice mindfulness. Observe your breath or notice the sensations in your body, rather than reaching for your phone. The story of the Buddha and Mara, patience in the face of distractions. During the Buddha's final meditation under the Bodhi tree, he was confronted by Mara, the embodiment of temptation and distraction. Mara sent armies of demons to frighten him and visions of pleasure to tempt him. Instead of reacting with fear or anger, the Buddha sat calmly, touching the earth as a witness to his resolve. This act of unwavering patience and mindfulness allowed the Buddha to overcome Mara's challenges and achieve enlightenment. The story illustrates that patience is not passive but an active engagement with life's difficulties, requiring repeated efforts to remain grounded. Building resilience through patience. Resilience and patience are deeply connected. Each time we practice patience, we build inner strength, making it easier to face future challenges. This cycle of growth mirrors the Buddhist concept of samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Just as life is a series of repeated experiences, patience requires continuous effort, allowing us to learn and evolve. Practical reflection. Reframe setbacks. View challenges as opportunities to practice patience rather than obstacles to success. Celebrate small wins. Acknowledge each moment of patience as a step forward, reinforcing your progress. Keep a journal. Reflect on situations where patience helped you navigate difficulty, and use these lessons to build resilience. The lesson of the stonecutter: small efforts lead to big results. A Zen parable tells of a stonecutter who chipped away at a massive boulder. Day after day, he struck the rock with his hammer, seemingly making no progress. After many weeks, one final blow split the boulder in two. The stonecutter realized that it wasn't the last strike that broke the rock but the accumulation of all his previous efforts. This story reminds us that patience is built through small, repeated actions. Each step may seem insignificant, but together, they lead to profound transformation. Moving forward with patience. Patience is both a practice and a mindset. By repeating mindful actions, whether through meditation, daily tasks, or interactions with others, we develop the resilience to face life's challenges with grace. The next time you feel impatience bubbling up, pause. Take a deep breath and remind yourself that growth takes time. Reflect on the stories of the bodhisattva Vesantara, the stonecutter, or the Buddha's encounter with Mara. Each teaches us that patience is not about enduring passively but about actively engaging with life, one moment at a time. With each repeated effort, you'll find that patience becomes less of a challenge and more of a natural response, guiding you toward greater peace and understanding. Embracing impermanence in daily actions. At the heart of Buddhist philosophy lies the concept of anicca, or impermanence. This profound teaching reminds us that all things, whether emotions, possessions, or even life itself, are transient. While this truth can initially feel unsettling, it is also liberating. Recognizing impermanence helps us let go of attachment, accept change, and approach daily actions with mindfulness and peace. By embracing impermanence, we learn to flow with the natural rhythm of life rather than resisting it. The Buddha and the Golden Palace. One of the most poignant teachings about impermanence comes from the story of the Buddha and a wealthy king who had built a magnificent golden palace. The king, proud of his creation, invited the Buddha to bless the palace. As the Buddha walked through its grand halls, he remained silent. The king, eager for praise, finally asked, "What do you think of my palace?" The Buddha smiled gently and said, "It is beautiful, but it is also impermanent." The king was taken aback, but the Buddha explained, "Even this palace, as splendid as it is, will one day crumble and fade. Understanding this does not diminish its beauty but enhances it, for it reminds us to appreciate it fully while it lasts." This story illustrates how impermanence can deepen our appreciation for life. When we accept that everything is fleeting, we stop taking things for granted and approach each moment with gratitude and presence. The parable of the mustard seed. One of the most famous Buddhist stories about impermanence is that of Kisa Gotami. Grieving the loss of her child, she sought the Buddha, begging him to bring her son back to life. The Buddha, rather than rejecting her plea, offered a solution: "Bring me a mustard seed from a household that has never known death." Kisa Gotami went from house to house, but everywhere she went, she found families who had also experienced loss. Through this journey, she realized that suffering and impermanence are universal. This insight allowed her to accept her grief and find peace. The parable of the mustard seed teaches that impermanence is not something to fear but to understand. By embracing it, We connect with the shared human experience and learn to move forward with compassion and resilience. Applying impermanence to daily actions. Impermanence is not just a philosophical concept, it is deeply practical. By understanding that everything is transient, we can approach our daily actions with mindfulness and balance. Practical ways to embrace impermanence. Appreciate the present, recognize that each moment is unique and fleeting. Whether it's sipping coffee, spending time with loved ones, or completing a task, immerse yourself fully. Let go of perfection, accept that nothing is permanent, including mistakes or setbacks. This perspective helps you move forward without clinging to past failures. Simplify tasks, focus on completing one task at a time, knowing that each action is part of a larger, ever-changing process. The sand mandala, a practice of letting go. In Tibetan Buddhism, monks create intricate sand mandalas, pouring colored sand into elaborate patterns over several days. Once the mandala is complete, it is ceremonially destroyed, and the sand is scattered into a river. This practice symbolizes impermanence. The effort and beauty of the mandala are real, but its destruction reminds us that nothing lasts forever. This act of creation and dissolution teaches us to detach from outcomes and find joy in the process itself. Similarly, in our daily lives, we can embrace impermanence by focusing on the effort we put into tasks rather than clinging to their results. Whether it's a project at work or a hobby, the process of doing matters as much as the outcome. The Buddha and the flowing river. Another powerful metaphor for impermanence is the flowing river. The Buddha taught that just as a river is never the same from one moment to the next, so too are our lives in constant flux. The water you step into now is not the same water you stepped into moments ago. This understanding can be applied to our emotions, relationships, and even our identities. When we recognize that nothing remains static, we free ourselves from the illusion of permanence and embrace change as a natural part of existence. Modern reflections on impermanence. In a world that often seeks permanence through possessions, status, or even digital records, embracing impermanence can feel counterintuitive. Yet, this perspective is incredibly freeing. For example, at work, acknowledge that each project or challenge is temporary. This helps reduce stress and keeps you focused on the task at hand. In relationships, appreciate your time with loved ones, knowing that every interaction is unique. This mindset fosters gratitude and deeper connections. In self-improvement, recognize that personal growth is a continuous process. Accepting that change is constant allows you to adapt and evolve without fear. The lesson of the dying leaves. A Zen master once walked with his students through a forest during autumn. As the leaves fell, he paused and said, "Look at the beauty of these falling leaves. Each one completes its journey and returns to the earth, nourishing the soil for new growth." This simple observation reflects the cyclical nature of impermanence. Just as the falling leaves pave the way for spring, endings in our lives make space for new beginnings. By accepting this truth, we learn to embrace both loss and renewal. Meditation on impermanence. A powerful way to internalize the concept of impermanence is through meditation. Guided meditation on impermanence. Find a quiet space, sit comfortably and close your eyes. Focus on the breath, observe each inhale and exhale, noticing how no two breaths are exactly the same. Reflect on change, bring to mind something in your life, an event, relationship, or feeling, and observe how it has evolved over time. Let go. With each exhale, release any attachment to permanence, welcoming the flow of change. This practice cultivates acceptance and helps you approach life's uncertainties with greater ease. The power of moving forward. Embracing impermanence doesn't mean detachment from life, it means engaging with it fully, knowing that each moment is precious and fleeting. By understanding that nothing lasts forever, we can move forward with a sense of freedom and purpose. The next time you face a challenge or moment of uncertainty, remember the stories of the Golden Palace, the mustard seed, and the flowing river. Let them remind you that impermanence is not a source of fear but a guide to living mindfully. Each action, no matter how small, is an opportunity to grow, adapt, and appreciate the beauty of life's ever-changing nature. In embracing impermanence, we find peace not in clinging to what was or what might be but in fully experiencing what is, here and now. Building compassion through mindful repetition. Compassion is one of the highest virtues in Buddhist philosophy, central to the path of spiritual awakening. Known as karuna in Pali, compassion is the heartfelt desire to alleviate the suffering of others. However, like any skill, compassion must be cultivated intentionally and repeatedly, through mindful repetition, whether in meditation, acts of kindness, or how we respond to challenges. We deepen our capacity to understand and care for others. This practice also helps us develop self-compassion, recognizing that kindness begins with how we treat ourselves. One of the most inspiring symbols of compassion in Buddhism is Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. His story offers timeless lessons about the transformative power of compassion, especially when practiced with consistency and mindfulness. The story of Avalokiteshvara, tireless compassion. Avalokiteshvara, also known as Guanyin in East Asian traditions, is a bodhisattva who embodies infinite compassion. According to legend, Avalokiteshvara vowed to help all sentient beings achieve liberation from suffering. He promised not to rest until every being was free from the cycles of birth and death, samsara. Initially, Avalokiteshvara believed this task could be completed quickly. However, as he worked tirelessly, he realized the enormity of the suffering in the world. Overwhelmed, his body shattered into 1,000 pieces. Seeing his dedication, the Buddha of infinite light, Amitabha, restored him, giving him 11 heads and 1,000 arms so he could better assist others. This story illustrates that compassion is not a one-time act but a continuous process. Despite challenges and setbacks, Avalokiteshvara persisted, embodying the principle of mindful repetition. Each act of compassion, no matter how small, contributes to the alleviation of suffering. The power of repetition in cultivating compassion. Compassion, like any skill, grows stronger with practice. Repeating acts of kindness, both toward ourselves and others, builds a habit of care and understanding. Over time, these repeated actions reshape how we respond to suffering, transforming our initial reactions into thoughtful, compassionate responses. Examples of repeated actions. Daily acts of kindness. Offer a kind word, a smile, or assistance to someone in need every day. Metta meditation. Regularly practice loving-kindness meditation, focusing on sending goodwill to yourself, loved ones, neutral people, and even those who challenge you. Mindful listening. Make a habit of truly listening to others, without judgment or interruption. The parable of the burning house. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha tells the story of a wealthy man whose house is on fire. His children are inside, playing, unaware of the danger. The man calls to them, but they ignore him, too engrossed in their games. Desperate, he devises a skillful means. He tells the children there are beautiful toys waiting outside. Intrigued, they leave the house and are saved. This parable demonstrates the Buddha's compassionate wisdom. Instead of forcing his children out, he used their own interests to guide them to safety. Similarly, in our daily lives, compassion often involves meeting people where they are and gently guiding them toward well-being. Self-compassion, the foundation of kindness. Before we can fully extend compassion to others, we must first cultivate it within ourselves. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a dear friend. 3 elements of self-compassion, according to Dr. Kristen Neff. Self-kindness, replacing harsh self-criticism with understanding and care. Common humanity, recognizing that suffering is a shared human experience, not a personal failure. Mindfulness, observing negative thoughts and emotions without judgment or over-identification. In Buddhist terms, self-compassion aligns with the principle of metta, loving kindness. Regularly practicing loving-kindness meditation helps us develop this quality. The story of the angry farmer. The Buddha once encountered a farmer furious about losing his ox. The man, consumed by anger, accused the Buddha of stealing it. Instead of reacting defensively, the Buddha responded calmly, saying, "I see your suffering. May your ox be found." The farmer, struck by the Buddha's compassion, calmed down and began reflecting on his own behavior. This story illustrates that compassion has the power to disarm hostility and open the door to understanding. By repeating compassionate responses, even in the face of anger or misunderstanding, we cultivate patience and kindness in ourselves and others. Practical tips for building compassion. Start small. Begin with simple acts of kindness, like holding the door for someone or offering a genuine compliment. Practice metta meditation. Regularly visualize sending loving kindness to yourself and others. Repeating phrases like "May you be happy," "May you be healthy," "May you be free from suffering." Be present. Compassion requires attention. Practice being fully present with others. Listening without distraction. Forgive yourself if you fall short in your efforts. Remember that growth is a process. Extend the same forgiveness to yourself that you would offer a friend. Modern reflections, compassion in action. In our interconnected world, opportunities for compassion are everywhere. For example, in the workplace, encourage a struggling colleague or take the time to mentor someone. In the community, volunteer at a local shelter or participate in community service. Online, use social media as a platform for positivity, offering support rather than criticism. Each act, no matter how small, contributes to a ripple effect of kindness. The Endless Journey, Avalokiteshvara's Thousand Arms. The story of Avalokiteshvara reminds us that compassion is a lifelong journey. The Bodhisattva's thousand arms symbolize the infinite ways we can help others, while his many heads represent the wisdom needed to understand their suffering. Each time we repeat an act of compassion, we strengthen our capacity to care, expanding our metaphorical arms to reach more people. Like Avalokiteshvara, we may face challenges or feel overwhelmed, but through persistence and mindfulness, we grow in our ability to make a difference. Moving forward with compassion. Building compassion through mindful repetition is not about grand gestures, it's about small, consistent acts of care. Whether it's offering a kind word, practicing meditation, or simply being present for someone in need, every action contributes to a more compassionate world. The next time you encounter suffering, pause and take a deep breath. Remember Avalokiteshvara's vow and the Buddha's calm presence. Let these stories inspire you to respond with kindness, patience, and understanding. Through repetition, you'll find that compassion becomes not just something you do but a part of who you are, enriching both your life and the lives of those around you. Conclusion: a journey toward peace and meaning. Together, we've explored profound lessons from Buddhist teachings, discovering how principles like acceptance, patience, understanding impermanence, and compassion can transform how we live and view the world. The stories of Bodhisattva Vesantara, Avalokiteshvara, Kisa Gotami, and metaphors like the river, autumn leaves, and sand mandalas have shown us that peace doesn't come from avoiding life's difficulties but from facing and embracing them with wisdom and kindness. Practicing these lessons not only helps us overcome anxiety, stress, and daily challenges but also brings us closer to enlightenment. Even in the smallest moments. This journey is not about the destination, it's about the slow, steady steps we take toward mindfulness and meaning. A message from the heart. Every small act you take, pausing to listen to someone, completing a task with mindfulness, or simply stopping to take a deep breath and be present, can be the first step toward meaningful change. These changes not only transform your own life but ripple outward, touching the lives of those around you. If these lessons and stories have resonated with you, I hope they've inspired you to live a fuller, more mindful life. The journey continues. Life is an ever-flowing river, and each day brings new opportunities to practice and grow. I'm grateful to be a part of your journey, and I hope you'll continue to walk this path with me. Remember, great changes begin with small steps. Let compassion, patience, and the spirit of acceptance guide you on the road ahead. Thank you for your time, for listening, and for sharing. May you find peace and joy in every moment.